What's up, everybody? I'm PumaPete.
And I'm Moosen.
And we're Friendly Fire Co-op back in Divinity Original Sin. Not playing Divinity Original Sin. We're doing
new playthrough.
No, not a new playthrough, Mason. Didn't you get the agenda for today? It's not a new playthrough.
No, I didn't get the memo.
Ah, damn.
You should have faxed.
Yeah. No one uses fax anymore. I sent it by carrier pigeon. Anyway, character creation guide for the full version. We did this for beta a long time ago, and I know the full version's been out for a while, but that is still one of the most viewed videos, and I've got a lot of requests to make a character creation for the full one with all the changes and such. So we're going to do one right now. We're going to get started. And we're going to start with the tributes, which is basically, I don't think as much has changed from the last one. But anyway, strength. Strength-based weapons, obviously you need it for that. It improves man-at-arms skills, but you don't 100% need it for man-at-arms. What I will say is it will have a negative impact if it's too low on the skill. So for example, you only need 1 rank in Men-at-Arms to learn any Men-at-Arms skill, up to 3, which I'll get into more later. But if it's a high-level Men-at-Arms skill and your strength is low, it will negatively impact it. So keep that in mind. If you're going Warrior, you're obviously going to want strength. That's really the main purpose of strength, is if you're going with a Warrior build. So increases the weight you can carry, but that's very rarely an issue in the game. So dexterity. Determines your chance to hit with dex-based weapons, which are the bows, the daggers, rapiers, I believe. Mason, is that a correct statement?
Yeah, rapiers, daggers, bows, yada yada.
And then it also improves expert marksman and scoundrel, much like the same way strength affects man-at-arms. You don't need it, but it has a positive impact the higher your dex is on the skills. Intelligence improves elemental and witchcraft spells, just like strength and dexterity on their respective ones. That's all intelligence does. There's no real weapons based around intelligence. You have staffs, but their stats aren't boosted by intelligence. So,
yeah, you
but
can
it's
cast
still
wiggle worm, whatever.
Yeah, it's still very important that you have this. If you're going, don't think that means you don't need elements. If your intelligence is low and you're trying to cast a spell, it will have a reduced chance of being effective or reduced damage or anything of that nature. So, obviously get that. Those are the 3 core stats, and then the 3 kind of secondary ones: Constitution, how much vitality you have, which is your health, and your maximum number of action points. That secondary aspect of it is not huge. Usually the max number of action points you have is not as important as your starting amount or
the amount you recover.
Or the amount you recover in combat. But obviously Constitution is important, especially if you're playing on a higher difficulty. You're going to want the extra Constitution for sure. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't have it for a long time, and I was pretty squishy. And then I just got 1 shot, and I wasn't happy about it.
Yeah, and then the more you die, because experience doesn't go to you when you're dead, the more you die, the farther behind you get, and the worse it gets. So pick up Constitution early if you're playing on a harder difficulty, especially hard mode. If you're on easy, it's not as big of a deal, because your character naturally has a bajillion health points. So that kind of, its usefulness effects is definitely dependent on what level you're playing on. Speed affects your movement speed, which is actually really big in this game. If you're a melee class, your ability to get around is huge. Initiative, which is who acts first in combat, not quite as big of a deal, and how many action points you can use in combat, which is how many you recover per turn. That's the big part of speed. You're definitely going to want speed. Even if you're a warrior, you need speed.
If you've seen any of our recent Let's Play, our current one, you'll see me run literally 500 feet away.
Yeah.
And still have room to attack.
Yeah.
It's real nice.
Speed's a real big deal. Especially if you're a melee-based character, because you use it for both moving and for the action point recovery. But even if you're not, even if you're a mage, even if you're a ranger, I think it's the most important secondary stat, in my opinion. How do you feel about that? Yeah?
Yeah.
All right.
I would say so.
Fair statement to make. Perception, critical chance, not that big. Initiative, again, it kind of compounds with speed for your initiative. And starting action points in combat. That one's pretty big, because if you have a bunch of speed and a low perception, you'll enter combat still with a very limited number of action points, 5 or 6. And it kind of makes your first turn a bit useless. So perception's big, and then obviously ability to detect traps and accuracy when shooting.
Or secret loot.
Yeah.
Which is the best stat. I rank that 10 out of 10.
No, it's really important.
Perception
I will say
wins.
One of your characters, either one of your main characters or any of the minions that you bring with you, or whatever they're called. Not minions. Companions. Whatever you want to call them.
Friends.
Make someone have perception. You're definitely going to need the ability to detect traps as you progress in the game. There's some parts that are pretty heavily defended by traps. And the alternative is just walking into all of the traps and blowing them up, which is my method. Don't recommend it. Especially if you're on a harder difficulty. One mine can really, mess your day up. So pick up perception. If I had to rank the 3 core stats, it would probably go speed number 1, constitution 2, perception 3. But somebody has to have perception, so it's really hard to just straight up do that. But yeah, so that is how all the stats work, in case you did not know. Next thing that we want to talk about, abilities, which is in here. So the weapons one's bow, crossbow, single-handed, two-handed. You just get a flat damage boost, or not a flat, but a scaling % damage boost for each level. So obviously you're just going to want to focus on what weapon you're using, but this isn't a huge stat to have, but it's nice. I try to keep it leveled up when I can, but I prioritize it below the skill abilities. So that's how weapons work. Defense, a little bit more complicated. Armor specialist, you just get more armor per stat point, and also the movement penalty you get from armor is lowered the higher your armor specialist is. So that can be useful if you're a warrior who's wearing heavy things but also needs to get close to enemies. Bodybuilding.
Now you see bodybuilding.
Bodybuilding and willpower.
The more points you put into bodybuilding, the more you look like Arnold Schwarzenegger on the screen.
That's not, Mason, that's not how it works at all.
No.
You're just lying to people.
Damn.
Bodybuilding and willpower are both super duper important. Because it says it affects saving throws against physical statuses. If you're not as familiar with RPGs, you may not know what that means. The way crowd control is applied in this game, you have to roll on a 1 to 100 scale to dodge the CC. And the higher your bodybuilding stat is, the lower you need to roll. So if you have 0 bodybuilding and 0 willpower, you may have to roll 90 to 100 out of 0 to 100 to stop getting knocked down or stop getting feared or anything of that matter. So bodybuilding and willpower are really, really important. Those are my big 2 defense skills I would recommend, especially higher levels or higher difficulties, or if you're doing a lone wolf run and you only have 2 characters instead of 4, it's that much more important that you can dodge CC, or you're just gonna end up doing nothing as the enemy beats on you. So keep those 2 things in mind. And then shield specialist, increased chance of blocking with a shield. Nice if you're using a shield, but not necessary. So I wouldn't prioritize it, but if you have extra points laying around, feel free to throw one in there. Let's move on to skills. Aerothurge. Alright, so the way all of the skills in this game work is you can take any skill up to a certain cap depending on the level. So Aerothurge determines how many air-based spells you can take, and if 1 point in it means you can take 3 Aerothurge spells. You can take any 3 as long as your character's base level is high enough. So if you have just 1 point Aerothurge, but your character's level 20, you could take 3 of the highest level air spells. It doesn't necessarily mean that your Aerothurge has to be high. So,
but it will make them cost a metric fuck ton.
Yeah, the action points are a lot more if your skill in that specific area is not skilled up. So the way it works, that's the same for all of the skills across the board. Aerothurge affects air spells, Expert Marksman, Ranger, Geomancer, Earth spells, Hydrafist, Water spells, Man-at-Arms, Warrior spells, Pyrokinetic Fire spells, Scoundrel, Rogue, and Witchcraft, which is kind of a non-elemental magic, which focuses a lot on buffs and debuffs. So that is how that will work. Level 1 gives you 3 skills that you can learn. Level 2 is 5. Level 3 is 7. Level 4 is 9. And then level 5 gives you an unlimited number of spells that you can learn. So level 5 is the max cap for all of these abilities. And then if... What was I going to say? Oh no, I'm drawing a blank. All right, we're just gonna roll. We're just gonna move on. So
professionalism.
I just want to give a quick summary of how the spells work. So Aerothurge Has a lot of like utility stuff from my experience. There are some damaging spells around it, but it gives like invisibility, it gives teleportation, it gives tornado, which lets you remove elemental effects from the ground. So Aerotheurge is kind of like a utility, a little bit of damage, but not that much. Expert Marksman, Ranger Spells, lots of mobility, a lot of stuff with bows, obviously. Some kind of like healing based, but not necessarily healing. It won't let you heal health, but it can remove debuffs. So some debuff removal stuff in the Expert Marksman tree.
Cleansing effects.
Yeah, cleansing. That would be a good RPG term, if I could have thought of it. Geomancer. Geomancer is one of the two, in my opinion, main damaging elemental spells.
It's good for welcoming them to Earth.
Yeah, Geomancer has a lot of poison-based stuff, a lot of AoE. Boulder Dash is a super awesome early game Earth spell that you can pick up almost right away. Some cones. Also, Geomancer has some summons, which are obviously nice. All of the elemental spells have summons, but Geomancer seems to have quite a few. And also a few nice buffs like Bless, which is awesome for a melee-based character, and Fortify, which is a defensive buff that's really nice to have as well. Hydrafist. Definitely, I think, would you agree Water Elemental is the most utility-based?
Yep. All damn heals.
Yeah. Water Elemental, it brings heals, it brings some cleanses, it brings some buffs to your main character's health. It does have some damaging spells. It has Ice Elementals, it has Ice Shards, but it also brings Rain. I think Hydrafist is very important to have, but Jahan starts with it. So if you don't want to run a Hydrafist in your party, you can pick up a companion early on that will have it. But I like to have Hydrafist on the main character as well to bring some extra heals, bring some extra utility. Nice to have. Man-at-Arms, the only school that's based off of strength. A lot of warrior abilities, so melee-based damaging abilities. Some CC, some heals. It has a lot of utility. I think Man-at-Arms has the most abilities in it because it's the only thing that strength helps with. So Man-at-Arms can be played a lot of different ways. You can kind of bring a support type class to it, but a lot of times it's going to be melee-based damage. Pyrokinetic, #1 elemental damaging abilities in the game.
Fire.
#1 friendly fire, but no, Pyrokinetic definitely has the highest damaging capability of all of the elemental schools by far. A lot of AoE, a lot of big explosive damage. I recommend it. That gets my highest recommendations.
My lowest recommendations.
Scoundrel, rogue stuff, stealth, backstabs, lots of CC, knockdown stuns.
Gotta be melee range.
Yeah, it's a melee range one, much like the Man-at-Arms. But yeah, so hastes, stuns, invisibility, a lot of typical rogue RPG things, and then witchcraft. Witchcraft is a lot of buffs and debuffs. It's kind of like it's a heavy support stat, so like you wouldn't primarily be able to deal damage with witchcraft, but it's nice to have witchcraft for all of the buffs and debuffs that it offers. Alright, personality stuff. Bartering. Higher bartering, the less you have to pay for items from merchants, and the more you get if you sell them stuff. Simple as that. Not much to bartering. Charisma. It says it determines the first impression you make on other people. That's important. More important. Talent for charming, intimidating, and reasoning. What this means is the higher your charming is, the less times you have to win rock, paper, scissors to win dialogue trees. And like, this may not sound important, but if you're the worst rock, paper, scissors player in the history of the world, like myself, and your charisma's low, you may have to win 5 rock, paper, scissors matches while the AI only has to beat you twice. So charisma, while it may not seem huge, it can help you get out of a lot of combat. It can help you access some alternative ways of beating quests that you may otherwise not be able to do. So useful to have, if nothing else. I would recommend having it on one character if you can afford the ability points. Leadership. Gives buffs to everybody else in the party.
Very important.
Yeah, really nice to have. Initiative, damage, chance to hit. I think even some more stuff.
First rank, isn't it like 10% to hit, 10% damage, and
no, that's second rank.
Initiative?
Yeah, that's second rank. But yeah, Leadership is definitely really nice to have. If you don't want to put it on your main character, put one on Medora, put it on Jahan. Just have it. I really recommend having leadership on somebody. Lucky Charm.
If you don't take it, you're dumb.
Yeah, if you don't take it, you're dumb. Mason 2014. Lucky Charm determines your luck in finding extra treasures and improves your offense rating. So offense rating is what? Chance to crit and chance to hit?
Yeah.
So Lucky Charm, useful for combat. More importantly, helps you find rare loot. Do you use that still?
Yes.
Do you like it?
Yes.
Mason likes it. That's like the #1 recommendation.
I only play this game for the loot.
That's something. Yeah, if you're playing an RPG for looting, like obviously you want the best loot. So Lucky Charm is nice to have. Craftsmanship, blacksmithing, building metal-based stuff. So metal weapons and armor, which is a lot of warrior stuff. Obviously, all weapons are metal, but the armor is more warrior-based things. It also allows you to repair things.
Very important.
Yeah, repairing is super useful for weapons. Not as much for armor, but you can get some really awesome weapons early game that are like orange that you just happen to stumble upon. That will be way better than anything you find for a while. And if you can't repair it, you're screwed.
Like me.
Yeah,
I'm stuck in that position.
Yeah, you're screwed if you can't repair it. So definitely. Again, one person should probably have blacksmithing. Crafting, craft leather armors and cloth armors, as well as, like potions and things as well, correct?
Yep.
So crafting, pretty useful. I actually have not experimented with it a whole lot, but I've been told that crafting and blacksmithing are both good to have. So consider investing in it if you can. Obviously, it's hard to spread ability points across all of this stuff, so kind of, take what you can get. Lore Master is basically a must-have, right?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's kind of a point sink as a skill, but
what do you mean a point?
Like you sink too many points in it, but it's a good skill regardless.
Yeah,
you like to identify.
It sucks. It sucks that you have to invest points in it because like all it does is let you identify gear, but you need to identify gear in this game. Like it's not like most things are unidentified and every once in a while you'll find something most things are identified and just like every once in a while you stumble upon something unidentified. All green, blue, and orange loot is unidentified, basically.
It's the worst.
So you absolutely need someone with Lore Master. It's not even an option. And then Telekinesis determines the range and weight of items you can move telepathically. Not super useful, but there are definitely some interesting uses you can use for it. Grab some items that otherwise would be out of reach. Just things like that. I wouldn't give it the highest of recommendations, but if you can spare the extra ability points, it doesn't hurt to throw 1 or 2 in it to grab some stuff that would otherwise like be inaccessible due to lava or terrain or something of that nature.
Yeah.
Okay. And last but not least, Nasty Deeds. This is kind of like roguish stuff that's not in combat. Lockpicking. Useful to have, would you say? You started to run lockpicking, right?
Yeah, it's useful to open some chests. I mean, most doors, if you need to get through them, you can just break them down.
Yeah, or usually you can find keys and stuff. But
yeah.
Lockpicking is useful to have if you can kind of spare the ability points again. Pickpocketing. How do you feel about pickpocketing?
You see, in a lot of the early game with some of the quests, I'm not going to get into any spoilers here, but if you require to pickpocket an item off really it'll have a value too high to your pickpocketing skill for the early game that you're in, and you can't really get it.
Pickpocketing's tricky.
Yeah,
it can be useful to like get some alternative ways of beating quests, but at the same time, you need to have it high to use it. Like 1 point in pickpocketing is not going to be enough. So if you're going to invest in pickpocketing, invest heavily. If not, just leave it. And then sneaking.
If you're going to play rogue, very important.
Yeah, even more so than just like sneaking out of combat, sneaking in combat is huge because it lets you deal more damage, and the higher your sneaking ability, the less it costs to go into stealth, correct?
No, it's the harder you are to see, I believe.
The game is also telling me it decreases action point cost.
I haven't
but
seen
also
anything,
also harder to see. So yeah, sneaking is important if you're playing a rogue. Absolutely, pick it up for both in combat and out of combat purposes. 10
most important rogue skill.
Yeah.
Right there.
All right, that is all the ability stuff. So we'll jump into skills now. I'll start with warrior stuff, and we're gonna kind of just I'm not going class by class because everything is customizable. Everything's 100% customizable. I would actually recommend customizing any of the starter classes to kind of fit your taste. So we're just going to go through each skill tree and kind of give our recommendations for it. So first, Man-at-Arms skills. Number 1 ability, Battering Ram. It's first on the list. I think it's the best. Battering Ram brings like all kinds of utility. It brings damage. It brings mobility, which is huge for warriors. It helps you get into combat from far away, and it offers a chance to knock down. I play a warrior/caster-based class, and I think you absolutely want to take Battering Ram early game. Number 2 rank happens to be number 2 on the list. Crushing Fist. Less damage.
So good.
But yeah, it's ranged, which is unique for a warrior ability. A lot of them don't offer much range, so it's good for that. Also, 100% chance to set knockdown status. Minus bodybuilding from enemies, but it's your earliest CC option for warriors, and I think it's really good. Unless you're just like loaded with CC on your other character, I would recommend picking it up. Number 3, I think could go a couple different ways, but I'm going to say Dust Devil first. One of your only AoE options early game as a warrior. Spin in the circle, kind of a typical Whirlwind-esque ability from other RPGs. Nice to have. Not too many action points. The other option, if you're going more utility, Cure Wounds. Cure Wounds is like the biggest early game nuke heal possible.
Dude. I mean, I would say just beginning early game. It's pretty.
Yeah,
it's pretty big throughout.
Right,
the game.
it'll scale with your strength. So Cure Wounds will kind of always be a massive nuke heal.
It's like a full heal.
Yeah, even if
pretty much.
Yeah, I definitely. It's hard to say if Dust Devil or Cure Wounds is more important. You can only take 3 if you only have 1 point of Man-at-Arms early game. But I don't think you would be wrong to go with either. So just kind of whatever you're feeling. If you want the heal, go Cure Wounds. If you want more damage, go Dust Devil. Skill number 5, Encourage. I actually think there's a very large gap off from skill 4 to skill 5, unless you're going a very heavy utility. I don't recommend any of these last 3 skills, but you know, if you want some more support, Encourage would be probably the best support one. It boosts strength.
Want some more support? Be a mage.
Yeah, to be honest, that's what it should be. But if you're interested, boost strength, boost dexterity, boost intelligence. Kind of a nice buff, just not overly useful. So I wouldn't recommend it, because a lot of the time you're using strength, dex, and intelligence for, you know, equipping certain gear. If you're too low to use the gear, you're not going to encourage and then equip the gear, because then when you lose the encourage, you lose it. So I wouldn't recommend encourage, but
that'd be some 6 next level strats.
Yeah,
there.
Maybe someone out there is doing it, but we're not. Skill number 6, I don't like it. Melee Power Stance. Improves damage of melee attacks. It says it doesn't cost any action points, but each attack will cost 1 extra action point. So a lot of times melee attacks will cost 3 to 4 action points. This will make it cost 4 to 5, and it reduces your chance to hit, which if you're playing on a harder difficulty, you can't afford. Like, your chance to hit's pretty low early game on higher difficulties. Melee Power Stance will make it that much worse. I would recommend avoiding Melee Power Stance, but I'm sure some people out there like it. And then last, the skill's like barely even worth mentioning. Divine Light decreases willpower and bodybuilding and sets warm status.
That's the one that used to set people on fire,
yeah,
right?
Divine Light used to be insane. It used to be a cone, set people on fire, and deal damage. It was like one of my highest recommended skills. It's trashed here now. I don't
Only
think
makes people warm.
I don't think decreasing bodybuilding and willpower is that useful, because a lot of the times with CC, it's luck based, but also enemies will be immune to knockdown or immune to stun, and decreasing their bodybuilding and willpower won't change the fact that they're immune to it. So it will make them more susceptible to stuff that they can be hit by, but I just don't think it's that useful. And I do think Warrior is the class that I have like the best grasp on, so I wouldn't recommend taking this, but I'm sure someone out there will tell you it's good. So if you want some utility, go Cure Wounds, Divine Light, Encourage, but you're going to be screwed in the early game, so I wouldn't recommend it. Alright, moving on, Marksman. Marksman obviously has a lot less abilities to talk about, but the number 1 skill for me is Tactical Retreat. It lets you jump out of a hazardous situation. It's basically...
lets you jump far. Too.
Yeah, you can jump up to 15 meters. It doesn't take many action points if you have high dexterity, or...
What is it, 3 or 4?
Yeah, it's 3 or 4 if you have a good
Equal
expert marksman
dexterity.
level and you have good dexterity. It's basically the best retreating ability possible early game. Even if you're not a marksman, if you're like a rogue or you're a caster, it may not hurt to have a 1-point expert marksman specifically for this ability, because I think it's that good. Ability number 2, Ricochet. Fire normal arrow that deals 70% weapon damage, and then it will ricochet to other targets. I actually don't like this ability that much. It sounds like it would be really good, but the arrow has a tendency to jump to like crates or boxes or just like random crap. So
He's just mad he has bad RNG. That's what it is.
Take it if you have the extra spot, but early game you only get to start with 3 skills. So unless you're going straight expert marksman, it's probably better to have other things. And then number 3 for expert marksman, ranged power stance. It works a lot like melee power stance. Boosts your damage but lowers your chance to hit, and it costs extra action points to hit. I just wouldn't recommend it. You can take it if you really want to, but it would definitely not be high on my list. All right, Scoundrel. Mason.
Scoundrel.
This is Mason's territory.
This is my territory.
All right, number 1.
All right. Number 1, Walk in Shadows. You're gonna die if you're seeing a bunch. There are times I've gotten one shot.
Yeah, rogues are just so squishy. Like, you need to be able to turn invisible.
I mean, and it's 5 turns as well. It's a long time. You can like pass turns, get tons of action points, come out of stealth, one-shot somebody, and then go hide in the corner.
Yeah. So
by sneaking.
Absolutely number 1.
Yeah.
What would you say is number 2?
Fast track.
Fast track above Razor's Edge.
Above Razor's Edge.
Okay.
I mean, Razor's Edge isn't bad. Fast track is fantastic.
Yeah.
Hasted for starting AP, 4 max AP, 3 recovery to AP, and bonus movement.
Yeah.
It's literally anything you need.
Yeah, move farther,
Pop that,
attack more.
Go invisible, literally have all the action points in the world, blow somebody up.
Yeah. And then skill 3, Razor's Edge.
Yeah, just a flat stun. You got to be real close to do it.
Yeah.
Wouldn't recommend running right up to somebody, but it's a good skill.
Yeah, it's fair to say that all of the rogue skills are pretty good, right?
Yeah. They're all fantastic.
If you wanted to start with all 3 rogue skills, you wouldn't be in a terrible spot. Rogue used to be really bad. Definitely got some buffs. Having the stun early game is nice.
Feather duster damage.
Yeah. So
anything.
You wouldn't be in a bad place if you took all 3 of these right off the bat.
No, you'd be in a fine place.
Yeah.
That's what I did.
That's what you did?
Yep.
All right. So there you go. Mason did it. Can't be a bad idea.
It could be a horrible idea.
Next area, Pyrokinetic. Burning Touch. Or sorry, number 1 is definitely Flare. Flare is your number 1 source of ranged damage early game with across all of the schools of magic, in my opinion. It does fire damage, but more importantly than that, it can light things on fire, which is huge in the early game. There's a lot of zombies. There is a lot of oil barrels just kind of lying around. You can light the poison that the zombies release. What?
And who doesn't like explosions?
Of course, who doesn't like explosions. But you can light like the poison that the zombies release on fire to do more explosions and damage. It's just really useful to have. If you're running anything with pyromancy and you don't have flare, you're doing it wrong. Skill 2 obviously is Burning Touch. In my opinion, significantly less useful. Mostly because of its range. It's a 3-meter range, so it's like a melee range ability. Not useful if you're, in most situations, a lot of mages don't want to be that close. If you're that close, you're in trouble. And only 20% chance to set burning status. That's not even that good. Obviously, mine's lower because my intelligence isn't that high on this character, but don't take it unless you really want 2 fire abilities. Just take Flare and be happy with that. Next school, Hydrafist. Skill 1, minor heal.
For sure.
Yeah, it's one of only 2 heal options you have early game. You either have minor heal or you have cure wounds. Those are your only 2 options for a long time. So.
And yeah, cure wounds you're gonna use once a fight. Healing.
Yeah, cure wounds has like a 20-turn cooldown.
Minor heal, just like 5.
Yeah, and that gets a lot lower as your intelligence and your Hydrafist level up. So. I absolutely recommend having minor healing on a starting character, even though you can get it early on Jahan. So if you can fit Hydrafist into any of your character's builds, do it. Minor heal's nice. Slow Current. Actually a pretty nice ability. Slow status lowers enemies' movement. It lowers their action points. all kinds of good stuff.
Literally the opposite of Fast Track.
Yeah, not a bad ability, just not as useful as Minor Heal, obviously. So if you want to take Slow Current, you wouldn't be in a bad spot to take it. It's just not as useful as Minor Heal. Aerothurge, Teleportation, number 1.
So good.
Probably the best spell out of all of across every class. Just like the number 1 utility spell. You teleport targets away, which is huge. It can move 15 meters away from where it's at. So if it's 10 meters away and you can move 15, you can basically move a character like 25 meters if you have a line of sight to do that.
But the kicker is you do it on a lot of bosses too.
Yeah, and you can also drop characters onto other characters if you place them carefully. So teleportation is huge. Also, it does crushing damage, which is awesome early game because crushing damage does more against skeletons. So
they're being too spooky. You just drop them on.
Yeah, teleportation's awesome. Take it absolutely if you're Aerothurge. If you don't, you're doing it wrong. Head Vice, blind status, basically your most reliable Aerothurge damaging ability early game. Not great, but not terrible. And then skill number 3, Bitter Cold. Not very good in my opinion. All it does is set shield status, so that is not the same as slowed. They won't have a action point negative. It's just less resistant to water spells and more resistant to fire spells. And also, it lowers movement a little bit. Yeah. But by far, it's like a very far number 3 for Aerothurge. Don't take it unless you're going pure Aerothurge. That's the only scenario in which you want that as your third ability. Geomancer, like I said, pretty nice set of spells to have. Midnight Oil. If you were taking Flare... See, it's hard to rank Geomancer because Midnight Oil is really, really good. Even by itself, it's not bad.
Coupled with Flare.
But if it has Flare, it's definitively the best one. Because you drop Midnight Oil, you slow all of the enemies, and then you light it on fire and do a bunch of damage. If you don't have Flare, it's still a slow. It's still an AoE slow.
But Spider can soak up a bunch of damage.
Right,
They're resistant to poison in the early game.
Yeah.
And they do earth damage.
Yeah, Summon Spider is 1 or 2, depending if you have Flare. Does a good chunk of damage, but more importantly, like Mason said, it soaks up a lot of early game damage, and it's resistant to poison, which is a lot of the early game stuff because zombies do poison damage, and they're all over the place early game. Spoilers. So take Summon Spider for that if you want. If you don't take Midnight Oil, even if you are doing both, if you're going a pure caster and you're doing Pyromancy, Geomancer, I would recommend Flare, Midnight Oil, Summon Spider. Simple as that. I think those are probably 3 of the best ones to have if those are your 2 classes. Magical Poison Dart, not bad, but just not that good early game because it's useless against zombies, it's useless against skeletons because skeletons don't take poison damage, and that's like a lot of the early game fights. Right? You agree?
Yeah.
Don't take Magical Poison Dart unless you're pure Geomancer.
Unless you want to heal the enemies.
Yeah. And last but not least, Witchcraft. Number 1 skill for me, Oath of Desecration.
Skill's too good to let go unused.
Yeah. It increases a target's damage, but it's not just melee damage, it can boost spell damage too, and that's what makes it really good. You can cast it on someone who's about to do an AoE spell, and it's just a huge damage buff.
Or you could cast it on somebody who's about to Gorilla Backstab.
Right. Also, it's nice for like hasted rogues and things like that. So, Oath of Desecration, also low action points, low cooldown, really awesome to have if you're running Witchcraft. Skill number 2 for me, Bloodletting, but I think this is a significant drop. I don't think Bloodletting is that awesome. Would you agree with that? It's not
kind of bad.
It's like a very below average damaging spell that can cause bleeding, but it's not that useful. So I think if you want to take Witchcraft early, only take Oath of Desecration and then run 2 other things from other skills. Bloodletting is not useful or not useless, but it's not that great, and Oath of Desecration is really good. And then last, Enfeebling Touch. Weaken an enemy. Weaken's not bad. It lowers bodybuilding. It lowers strength. It lowers damage. But you have
to be so close.
Yeah. Again, it's a lot like Burning Touch. It's a 3-meter range, so it's kind of like melee again.
And in some of the harder fights, if you're that close to somebody, you're pretty much dead regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. So I would not recommend Enfeebling Touch early game at all. I think Mass Weakness is very good, and that's something that you can get later on, but Enfeebling Touch, don't recommend it. And then the last thing, Special, it's just Staff of Magus. Every character gets it. It's not that useful. It's just kind of the mage's way to auto attack, more or less, if you want to call it auto attacking. Not that useful, but you get it for free. You need a staff to use it. There's not much to be said about it. So last thing to talk about, talents. Talents can be tricky to recommend because stuff can be class specific. So what we're going to try to do is talk about 5 talents that are useful no matter what your class is, and then we're going to talk about class specific ones. You can only take 2, so it's hard to balance this out, but this is the best we can do. So first talent, I want to talk about Scientist. Scientist gives you a bonus point in blacksmithing and 1 in crafting. Obviously really useful to have on your character that is choosing to level in that, but not useful if you're not going blacksmithing and crafting. That's the only benefit it gives you. So I would recommend it on one character if they're doing blacksmithing crafting. If not, completely ignore this. But it's nice to have. It's basically like 2 free ability points, which is awesome. Skill number 2, Bully. Bully is great. I think Bully is one of the best objectively good abilities, no matter what your class is. 50% extra damage against opponents that are slowed, crippled, or knocked down. CC is huge in this game. You're always going to be wanting to slow people. You're always going to want to knock people down, especially if you have a warrior or a rogue. And Bully just makes your damage that much better against those guys. So absolutely, Bully, if you don't know what to take, just take Bully. It's a great option. Number 3, Far Out Man. Far Out Man increases range of spells and scrolls by 2 meters. Good on literally anything casting spells. Far Out Man is great on anything that's probably not a rogue, like a pure melee rogue or a pure melee warrior. Even if you're running a hybrid, it's nice to have. 2 meters can make a big difference in this game. Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 meters is huge.
Especially when they're just like on the edge of 15 meters.
Right.
And you can't hit them.
Yeah.
You don't want to move to use any action points.
Yeah, Far Out Man is great. 4th skill I want to talk about, Pet Pal. Enables you to talk to animals. Obviously not super useful from a combat perspective, but there are
all the rats have funny things to say.
There is that. That's obviously the number 1 reason to take it. Who cares about the quests and the other ways of solving quests? It's really just talking about rats. But no, actually, Pet Pal helps you. It can get you quests that you otherwise would not be able to get at all, and it lets you talk to animals and complete quests in other ways. So Pet Pal is nice to have on just one character, but I think it's worth talking about. It's useful. It may not be a number 1 skill to take, but if you can afford it, it's nice to have. If not, get it later. And the last one I want to talk about that's generic is Light Stepper. Gives you a +2 perception bonus for detecting traps and secrets.
Recommend on somebody.
Yeah, on whichever character you're focusing on perception with to detect traps, get that. It's 2 free ability points, or 2 free attribute points, which is even better. That's awesome. Obviously, it doesn't boost perception for everything, but detecting traps and secrets is a big deal on one character specifically. Whichever character you kind of walk around with out of combat should probably have Light Stepper.
Because who doesn't like free loot?
Right. And then class-specific ones, I want to talk about just 5 more of those. Arrow Recovery. It is I guess that's not ranger-specific, but obviously if you're not using arrows, you don't want it. Arrow Recovery gives you a 20% chance to recover special arrows after shooting it. That's a big deal. Special arrows can be expensive in the early game if you're a ranger. And that just gives you a 1 in 5 chance of getting an explosive arrow back, a 1 in 5 chance of getting a fire arrow back. It's nice. It can save a lot of money. It can be a big difference in combat having 1 extra fire arrow that you otherwise may not have had.
Or 1 extra stun arrow or whatever it would be.
Yeah, definitely nice to have. Next class-specific ability, Backstabber. Allows a character to backstab with daggers and knives.
If you're playing Rogue and you don't have Backstabber, you should not be playing.
Yeah, it's literally not even an option to not take this. It's basically the number 1 way of dealing damage.
It literally like quadruples your damage output.
Yeah.
If you're behind a target.
Yeah, so you absolutely want to take this. The only reason I waited this long to talk about it is because I wanted to do it with the class-specific stuff. Number 3, Opportunist. This is a must-have, I think, if you're a warrior. Gives you the ability to perform attack as opportunity. What this means is if you're in melee range of an enemy and it tries to walk away from you, you get 1 free auto attack on it.
Side note, if you are a scoundrel and have Backstabber and they walk away from you and you have Opportunist, you get backstabs on them.
Really?
So that's a nice thing.
Yeah, that would be useful to have if you can afford to have 1 point in Man-at-Arms.
Yep.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. I actually didn't know that. That just makes Opportunist that much better. But even if you're just a straight up warrior, you want Opportunist. It's really good to have. Thick Skin. another warrior ability that can be useful. 5 extra base armor, plus base armor based on, or plus armor based on your man and arm skill. Maybe not something you need right away, but something to keep in mind if you just want to get extra tanky. That's the way to do it. And then the last class-specific ability I want to talk about, Gorilla. Mason,
Very good.
You know a lot more about
10
that.
10 out of 10.
Doubles your attack damage while sneaking. Actually does not require Scoundrel, just requires sneaking.
Yep.
But
sneak up behind somebody, backstab them for 400 damage. The
yeah,
fight's over.
If you're running Gorilla Backstabber as a rogue, you stealth out, you backstab someone, tons of damage. Awesome.
Everybody dies.
Yeah, it's awesome to take. So
Nice.
Consider that combo if you're running a Scoundrel. That's actually, I think, is that all we want to talk about? That's good.
I believe so.
All right. I know this video is a little bit longer, guys. I hope you guys can forgive us for that, but we really wanted to be, you know, very detailed in the character creation. I hope someone finds this useful. If not, then I hope you guys, I don't know why you watched this long. But thanks for watching. Remember to subscribe if you'd like to see more daily Divinity Original Sin content, as well as some quest guides and stuff in the future. And we will see you next time. Bye.
But